everybody. Welcome to the Underwater Photography Show. As always, I am Matthew Sullivan.
And I'm Alex Mustard.
And today we have one that Alex is an expert in, and I am not so much an expert in, and that is how to survive long-haul travel and long-haul flights towards diving destinations. I have done those flights, but I don't like flying, and I have not done them nearly as much as Alex has. So I'm going to let Alex take this away, and I'll pepper him with questions here and there.
Well, the first thing I would say is to reach many of the world's best destinations for underwater photography, it often means a fair amount of chugging along on aeroplanes for most of us. So it's an important thing for us to cover. I would say that as an underwater photographer, we have a sort of special angle on it because we're also baggage limited. You know, there's no point, you can go online and read, tips for long haul flying, and they'll give you a massive long list of things to pack for the plane to keep yourself entertained and occupied and meditated and all those things. And yes, those things are good. But the reality is, as underwater photographers, our luggage, our hand luggage, is going to be packed full of underwater photography gear first and foremost. And then the final, part of that is then maybe thinking about what's going to make you comfortable on the flight. But I would say that it is important because actually most of the best destinations are not just a single flight away for any of us. There's a lot of, long haul flights and then, some short haul flights as well. And, most of us are reasonably time limited. So the better you can make use of all that time in the resort, all that time on location, the better for your photography. So if you can arrive a little bit better prepared, a little bit fresher, you're going to come out of that plane in a good state. So although it seems like a slightly esoteric topic, I do think it does relate to how effective we are as photographers. And just reading the standard How to Survive on a Long Haul Flight, I think that's something that, yes, it is important, but not all that stuff is practical as underwater photographers because of the lack of space and the lack of, you can't just dedicate your whole carry-on baggage to things that are going to make your flight super comfortable. That said, I would say that quite a lot of the things that I do are out there in all the standard procedures. But one of the things that I think makes a big difference is the more familiar you are with your travel, the less it takes out of you. And I think so, you will, and I think all of you will relate to that, is that when you go to the place you've been to loads of times, it doesn't tire you out as much as going to a new place. So all I would say, there's no solution to that, but factor it in, pay attention when you go to your local airport and things, so you get to know it. If you arrive particularly early for a flight one time, or a flight gets delayed, use that time to get to know the airport. Find places. So your local knowledge actually can make you more comfortable. There's lots of airports where, actually if you walk down to pass that gate there's a seating area where no one ever sits, and you can go down there and just be completely on your own and have, 50 seats to yourself and actually have a lovely, peaceful, quiet time, which I think makes a massive difference to your airport experience, rather than just sitting on the seat that everyone sees as they come out of security and goes, oh, they're the seats, let's sit down in a massive pile of people. So little things like that. While I'm talking about the airport side, if you regularly transit through certain airports, knowing your way around, again, makes that less stressful. You land, okay, I'm here, I know it's that way, I know how far it is, and all those things. So if you ever have excess time, and it's a place you feel you're going to go back to, just spend a little bit of time and pay attention and learn your way around the airports. If you travel business, that a lot of underwater photographers do, again, and that's going to give you lounge access and things like that on routes, then, learn about what facilities the lounges have. Those are things you can do with a little bit of research ahead of time. But on lots of flights that I take, the ability to have a shower mid-flight, in a hub airport in the middle, can make a massive difference to how refreshed you feel at the end of a trip. And so knowing, which, if that's possible, there may be a paid lounge you have to use to get access to a shower there, or actually, I like fly through Qatar a lot, and like the main lounge they have there has showers, but there's, because Middle Eastern travel is dominated by male travelers, there's never any male showers available. Millions of female showers. But if you go to the other lounge, which is much nicer and quieter, this is just in a slightly different part of the airport, you can go straight into the showers. And that's just a very silly example, but having that knowledge, particularly when you fly from the home airport of a particular airline, the lounges there usually will be more than one lounge. and just doing a little bit of research about what you want. If having an amazing meal is a priority, people go, this lounge is the best for food. But actually, if actually what you want is peace and quiet and the chance to have a shower or whatever it is, then that sort of thing is the way. And if you are into that thing, you can do a little bit of research and find some really incredible places that you can get access to that people don't exist. I fly through Hong Kong quite a lot, going to the Philippines and places like that. And there's a lounge there where in one of the lounges they have these cabana bathrooms that you can have just as part of standard lounge access. You can't reserve them ahead of time, but you can have this room for 45 minutes. And it's basically like a private hotel room, but without a bed. So you've got a couch, you've got a full bathroom, you've got a bath and a shower, and you've basically got your own space in the airport, which you're allowed to use for up to 45 minutes, which, is amazing. And, that same airport in a different lounge doesn't have those, but it has day bedrooms where you've got a bed that you can lie down on. It's just in a private corridor with a curtain, but it's, there's all these little things. And that's just examples of places that I've been recently. But I think it's interesting to note those things because they can make a big difference in those stopovers, whether it's knowing that there's a paid lounge you can use here. Sometimes, airports have multiple terminals, and just taking the quick transport between terminals can give you access to the facilities that you really need on a trip. What I really wanted to talk about, though, is kind of stuff to take on the plane. I find that I'm fortunate that I can sleep very well in economy seats on planes. But I think it's something of a learnt skill. And the way that I'm able to do that is I find if I'm reasonably restrained so that I don't feel like, I'm flopping about and I'm not comfortable, I'll sleep much better. And I think one of the areas that most people find is with their neck. There are lots of solutions for that. I think the big, massive pillows that go across your shoulders, that's too much stuff for an underwater photographer to take. But they do make these nice wraparound collars now, which are, again, it's all about stabilizing your head. And I think when you have that stability, you do sleep really well. And those things are not so big and more comfortable to travel with. The other thing that for me is really important to sleeping on planes is I don't like my arms flopping about the place when I'm in a sitting upright. And so what I do, and it sounds really stupid, but there's loads of pictures of me doing this on planes because of traveling with other underwater photographers who love nothing better than taking pictures of you when you're asleep on a plane with your tongue hanging out or whatever, is I'll put my arms underneath the seatbelt. So I'll put the seatbelt on, but loose, and then just put my arms underneath it. And that restraint, I actually find, makes it much easier to sleep. Yeah. So when it comes to sort of surviving on long haul travel, the things that you hear again and again is get up every now and again if it's a daytime flight, just to keep your circulation going. It makes you a lot less tired at the end of the flight. Stay hydrated. So both of those things benefit from having an aisle seat rather than a window seat, because that gives you that option to get up and move around when you want to on the flight. Having loose clothing is always a very popular piece of general advice for thing. So I will usually, with most of the destinations I go to, I'll fly in shorts and a t-shirt, but I'll actually take some pajamas that I've kept from some previous flight, just some loose cotton pajamas that I'll wear. So I'll get on the plane in the clothes that I kind of want to arrive in. And as soon as I'm on the plane, I'll usually go to the bathroom and change into my pajamas. And then I'll wear those for the whole flight. It also means that if I'm a messy eater and I spill my food down my clothes, my arrival clothes aren't dirty. But those loose-fitting clothes are really important. People struggle on flights regularly by being too hot at times and too cold at times. And so the standard advice that travel sort of, writers give is, make sure you've got lots of layers to put them on. That doesn't work so well as a photographer because you just can't take too many clothes. But I'll often take, one long sleeve layer. But remember that you can always, ask for blankets on most of long haul flights, or pretty much all long haul flights. And it's well worth getting one of those, even if it's a daytime flight, because they'll usually provide them for you. And that's a good way of making sure you don't get cold. And again, if you are, eating spaghetti or whatever, it can save your t-shirt as well from a soaking. So little things like that. The things that I pack to take on the plane, I try and keep to a minimum, because anything that takes over my luggage space is reducing the amount of camera gear that I can take. So I'll usually take, a large roll-on case with as much in as the airline will allow me to take in it. And that's usually a lot. In the top of that, I'll usually pack the pajamas as padding and, a clean pair of, underpants and socks for changing if there's a shower in the middle of the trip or changing just before I arrive. I'll then, the only things I sort of take for the flight is usually two little bags, which I've got out put on the desk here. One is an old airline bag that I use to keep my charger in. So I don't take my my Apple charger for my laptop because it is huge and heavy. So I use these small Covolt chargers, which I've talked about before because I use them for charging my AA batteries and everything else. But I have one of them for all my, if it's a tight trip, I'll just take one of these, but I take two of them usually on both trips. And one comes with me in the hand baggage because these days most planes provide power, certainly long haul planes, provide more than just USB power. They provide you the chance to be able to put, an electric plug in and plug into those. And so I take a short plug cable with me, which I then plug into this. And then that gives me USB power to charge my headphones, my iPad, my phone, my laptop, all in one hub. And on destination, I use that again as my main charger. Usually in my hotel room where I'll charge my laptop overnight and charge my phone overnight, that sort of thing. But that I take with me in the little bag. And in that bag, I'll have a spare pair of headphones and all the little bits and pieces. But it's only just a small little lightweight airline bag from the past. And then I'll take a small plastic bag, which is not the nicest looking thing, with any cosmetics or things like that I might feel that you might want on a flight. So you can see that there's a toothbrush. You don't need to see everything in here, but there's a toothbrush in here. Other things that I think add to your comfort on a flight are moisturizers and things like that. If you've been in the sun a lot, you can often get dry skin on the way back on the plane. So it's always good to, when they hand out small bottles of moisturizer, keep hold of those. I do like face mists. As one small thing, tiny things, you sometimes get them on flights or you get them in a hotel room. Really good. Just water face mists are really good. My daughter actually has a reusable water bottle that has both a bit for drinking and a misting bit. And that's really nice because I think few things at the end of a long flight when you just feel so filthy and dirty, that face mist is very, 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 very good. So yeah, toothbrush, toothpaste, that sort of thing.
In that same vein of the face mist thing, I like to bring the makeup remover wipes just because every once in a while, every 8-9 hours, if you're sitting on a plane, it's nice to just clean your face off, and it gives you that same sort of feeling. It's just a little bit refreshing, and cleans off everybody else's germs and stuff that's floating around the plane. Or even on like normal trips, if you've been doing a lot of sweating or stuff like that, it's nice to clean your face once in a while.
Yeah, and obviously I don't have any hair issues, so I don't need to bring any hair products with me, but I've certainly, read in the past when reading, in-flight magazines with not much excitement going on the plane, people saying if you regularly wear makeup, actually come on the plane, take off your makeup, and then reapply it all, when there's an hour to go on the plane. Also, being aware of the routine of planes is very good. Planes usually feed you when you first get on them. And then if it's a long flight, they might feed you again about an hour and a half before you land. Being aware of those timings, being aware that, usually, they'll make an announcement about half an hour, 40 minutes before landing that we're half an hour, 40 minutes away. Fairly soon, the seatbelt sign will come on. That's when the bathrooms are busiest. So if you're a cunning traveler, what you do is when there's an hour to go, you go, right, now's the time when I can go to the bathroom and I won't have to queue up. And I'll be able to, go and won't feel like there's already a queue and I can't be too long in the bathroom and everything like that to clean your teeth or whatever, or shave, or if or do makeup, whatever you need to do. So just having that little bit of knowledge makes a big difference. Other things that I have in here, I do like to take a sinus decongestant for planes. I think it's very common as a diver, you come off a plane and you're really bunged up, and it's just from being in the air conditioning and everyone's germs. So I usually like that because it tends to just I just find sitting on planes, I always get a blocked nose. I'm just getting everything out of here just to see what's in here. Moisturizer for lips, really, you always end up dry lips on a plane. That's very, very normal. things to have. And then I suffer quite a lot on long haul flights by having dry eyes. So I usually also buy eye drops when I go on the plane. And I think that really makes a difference. But you just get used to what you need. But I don't have this in some great big bag. I have it in just a small, lightweight plastic bag that gets scrunched up. It's obviously security ready. If you're in the old style scanners that you have to take all this junk out for. And it's so it's ready for that. And not having it in an extra bulky, heavy bag, I think makes a big difference. I think digital packing can also be a helpful thing to make flights go well. You can, download your favorite stuff, even off YouTube, there's plenty of apps that will allow you to rip our episodes down. That will also help you with your sleep on the flights. Double win there. But, you can, download your favorite stuff. The laptop's not so easy, but on iPads, all the streaming services have apps that allow you to download a certain amount of content as well. I always work on planes. I like it. I find it's the peace and quiet is great for writing articles, and I think the excitement of going away diving or coming back from a trip always motivates me to want to write stuff. So I usually try and work on planes because that sort of thing is good. So none of that is earth-shattering. Oh, and then just funny, a few things just for yourself is I think it's good to be able to isolate yourself from the plane. So if you want to wear a mask over your nose and mouth, that can be quite a good idea, particularly if you're going away to a tropical destination in the winter, and lots of people are getting, from a sort of northern hemisphere winter, as an example, you can get on those planes and everyone around you is like, and you're just like, this is a flight I'm going to wear a mask on. And if you've got one with you, you can choose to wear one, and they weigh nothing, so they're easily in the bags. If you want to, hide from the plane, just keep hold of these or buy yourself a really nice one to use on all your flights. I think that can be a useful thing to have. And then having noise reduction headphones is a good thing. I like to take two different sets of headphones on my flights, partly because like my big over-ear noise reduction ones, they do last long enough for the flights, but if they accidentally get turned on in my bag or something, they can get a bit low on power. I mean, I can recharge them. But I also find that if you wear the same headphones for like 24 hours solid on loads of flights, your ears do start to suffer quite a bit. And again, you don't want to turn up on a dive trip with ears that are already aggravated. And then you go off on a muck diving trip and your ears are already a bit susceptible, and then you get an ear infection. So I like to wear in-ear ones for a bit and then over-ear ones for a bit, just so that my ears are kind of getting a little bit of a different battering in that regard, so that when I arrive, I don't have any ear problems. So, like I said, none of it is earth-shattering, revelatory, but I think common sense advice like that, applying your own common sense to your routes, the more familiar that environment, the more familiar the route, the more familiar the hub airports, the airports you're starting from, the less tiring the whole thing is. And I think all of that can make a big difference to how you feel when you arrive. It's very common for me that often the moment I arrive at the airport, but the moment I step off the plane, there's someone wanting my time for something or other, even before we're diving. So for me, getting off planes and being fresh and not be like, don't speak to me for 24 hours is rarely an option for me. So I think I've had to make sure I stay on top of these things. And I do think there is a benefit, because actually if I go back through my whole history in underwater photography, so often I've taken pictures that end up being favorite pictures of trips on the first day. And I don't know what the secret is about it, but I don't know whether it's the excitement and the passion that comes after waiting to shoot for a while. But being ready to make the most of that first day for me is a really important part of underwater photography.
Cool. Well, I really don't have anything to add to that. The only thing I ever take that I refuse to travel without is one of those little neck pillows. Even if it's like an hour and a half flight, I always have one. So I think your advice is pretty sage, just to get familiar and comfortable with the actual process of traveling. And it'll make the whole thing less stressful and more enjoyable and less tiring. But
I would imagine our viewers, who are also probably chugging backs and forwards a fair amount, have their own little tricks. And if anyone has got things that they find indispensable, that they wouldn't travel without, then do put them below in the comments, because I think that would make it a really useful resource. People can read that rather than listening to me waffle on for this episode.
Well, cool. Thank you guys for watching. Hopefully some of you benefited from Alex's knowledge. I know I'll be packing a couple of things that he suggested, and I'll definitely try that straight jacket arm under the seatbelt thing at some point because
I
like
would say
wrap.
it's like swaddling a baby,
Yeah, yeah.
and it works.
Well, I'll give it a shot. I'm not flying till end of August, but I'll try it on that flight for sure. So thank you guys for watching. Hopefully you enjoyed it, and we will see you next time.